Welcome to yet another edition of Inside Carolina's Game Plan podcast. Tar Heels and Spiders, North Carolina versus Richmond, Saturday, 3:30 in Kenan Stadium. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Jason Staples. No Greg Barnes tonight, so no golf talk. Even though I really need.
We can still talk golf now.
Well, we're going to forget what just happened in Fayetteville earlier. But at any rate, shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. As always, the sponsors of this show, Gene Triplehorn, already recognizing Doc Staples has a new camera that looks sharp. This is the ball-headed version of the game plan. Jason, what's happening, my man?
Not enough golf. That's what's happening.
Not enough golf. It's getting close to the Ryder Cup. Maybe we'll talk about that when Greg Barnes gets back on these shows.
UNC presence on there. We got a good excuse now.
I know.
One of the key figures.
Hopefully a future podcast guest.
I want in on that if so. I want lessons from him.
I
want to play 18 with him.
We need to he's a Chapel Hill guy, so maybe we can make it happen. But we need to talk a little football. Carolina and Richmond. Carolina, Jason, has not looked great on offense. But I think what people are missing, what I'm missing sometimes, is watching your video breakdowns, that it is not as bad as it seems from the scheme/coach side. We can debate that topic, but your videos pretty much highlight that there are plays to be made. So what is holding this offense back? If you can describe it without the use of video for people that haven't watched your videos. And folks, if you want to watch the videos, you subscribe to Inside Carolina for $1 for really cheap. You get Jason's film breakdowns. You get all the recruiting stuff. It is literally the best money you will spend if you're a Carolina football fan, basketball fan, any fan of the Tar Heels. But Jason, put it in plain English. What's Carolina's issue on offense?
I would say it's a combination of running backs, offensive line, tight ends, quarterback, and offensive coordinator. Just not really fitting together well yet, and not gelling in the way that they need to. So there's your short answer: is a little bit of this and a lot of that, and more of this over here. It's not one thing, and that's the hard part right now. And this is where Belichick. If you listen to the interviews that we've posted up on Inside Carolina this week, it sort of sounds like Belichick's just given a bunch of coach speak, right? Well, we need to get better, and all the areas. I mean, what is it that the offense needs to get better on? We need to get better on the offensive line, and we have to execute better at quarterback, and need to do a better job of making plays when they're there from the running back room. And this is what he's saying. And on the one hand, it sounds so anodyne and like, okay, you're not saying anything, and then you put on the tape, and you're like, danged if he isn't just describing what I'm watching.
Yeah, he's on it 100%.
It's what he's trying to say. So, and we actually should do a segment. We should just add a segment during the week of translating Bill Belichick's press conferences. Like, just do coach translation. Actually, there's a friend of mine who does this as a coach translation segment on a radio show that he has. I think we ought to do that with Bill, because there is some meat on that bones in terms of, like, you start to interpret, like, what is he saying, between the lines here? What is he actually saying? And, I'm looking at what he said this week, and it's like, well, what he's saying is, when these 9 guys are doing something right on offense, these 2 bust it. And it's not the same 2 every time. You'll watch 8 different plays, and on play 1, the quarterback's slow on the read, misses his spot by, 2 yards, or misses his spot by, I don't know, a yard. So it's just slightly off. The receiver makes the catch and then has an opportunity, but because he's kind of off balance or whatever, doesn't break a tackle, and you get nothing. Next play, quarterback is right on, does everything exactly right, reads it correctly, but there's pressure because the snap was slow and one of the offensive linemen, or actually more likely right now, one of the tight ends gets beat inside and gives up pressure. And then the next play, quarterback makes sure that they're in the right play, has the right check on, everything's there, everything's blocked up well, except the tight end sort of allows a little bit of penetration to the inside. The back takes off to the outside. This looks like it's going to be a 15-yard run, and the back goes down when, the corner coming up breathes on him. This is what's happening with the offense right now. Is it's just one little thing here and there where they don't have enough difference makers on this offense not to execute at every position.
Great point.
Right? When you have Drake May is an eraser, right? You talk about who has the chalk last. Drake May hands the offensive coordinator an eraser in addition to having the chalk last, right? You have him, and it's like, well, that guy missed his block, but it doesn't matter because Drake May just broke the tackle in the backfield, scrambled to the left, turned and threw across his body, and threw a dart, 17 yards upfield, splitting two guys and putting it on the money, and now you got a first down on 3rd and 13. That's an eraser. The other guy had the chalk last. You had two guys bust, and it didn't matter because that guy's so good. Last year, Omarion Hampton was an eraser more often than not. Well, that guy didn't make the perfect block, but Hampton got through there with so much power and so much speed that he barely noticed that there was a guy there that got an arm on him around the waist, and he got 7 yards after contact. Well, that's not happening this year. So that means that you've got to be that much better at every other position. And they've just not been great. And to use a golf analogy, you remember when Tiger Woods was changing his swing and he would not play as well in a tournament, and then he'd go into an interview and he'd be like, I'm close. I'm really close, guys. I could feel like and there was a point at which everybody's just like, Tiger's been close for a long time. Like, maybe he's never really getting there. And then he won 5 majors in 2 years. You're like, oh, yeah, I guess he was close. And what I saw against Charlotte was a lot of plays that were close. It was like, oh, if that guy just does that, then this whole drive scores. Like then you go from a stop to a score, and suddenly this goes from 20-3 to 48-3 in a blink. Well, that's where I feel like things are right now. Now, the problem is that they were close against Charlotte.
You're hitting all my talking points. Just keep rolling.
If you're close against Charlotte, where does that put you against, Cal or Clemson or NC State? That's the concern, is what happens when you actually have to play somebody who has, players also on NIL. We used to say, who has 85 scholarships. Now it's more about like somebody else who has a budget comparable to yours. And, their salary cap or whatever internally is comparable to yours. And so they've got to get better. They've got to get past being close really quickly. I do think there are certain things that they can do to help themselves more. I do think that the offensive coordinator, I do think Freddie Kitchens can make better use of the pieces that he has in terms of making sure, like, I just can't ask that guy. I can't expect that guy's going to do that, even though this is a win on the whiteboard. I can't expect, like, based on what we've seen so far, I can't expect that guy to do it.
I think one of those screen passes fits that, what you're saying right there, perfectly. They just couldn't get out there to get there.
That's right. And it's like, this looks great on the whiteboard, but that guy and that guy can't do what I'm asking him to do. So I have to throw this one in the bin, and I have to change what I'm going to call here, because I have to, now I know what I can't do. I know what those guys can't do. So some of what they're going to have to do over the course of the rest of the season is figure out what those limitations are. And then, of course, when Austin Blasky gets back, how much does that change some of your limitations up front? How much does that, The snap being better, for example, how much does that actually impact what you're able to do in your processing for your quarterback and all that? There's a lot of these things that they've got to figure out. And, I do think also a couple of these backs, they can't stay on 0 tackles broken all year, can they? I mean,
you mentioned Amarian. Amarian had over 1,000 yards for 2 straight seasons after contact. These guys have got to step up, quite frankly. And to your point, and this is no disrespect to Charlotte players, and I asked Belichick about level of competition, but you gotta be able to break tackles against Charlotte if you're going to break them against the competition that's coming. I don't know about this weekend, but the competition that's coming. But to your point, and you mentioned that, I believe on the day after, is how running backs have broken 2 tackles, not named Demon June, and he broke them. He broke 2 in his one game. I mean, that's startling.
On the year, based on what I'm looking at right now, they have a team total of 12 missed tackles forced through 2 games. Total. 8 of those are by Gio Lopez.
And that's him running for his life.
Right. So, and then the other 4, you've got 2 by Goss, 1 by June, and then you've got 1 by Ship on a pass play. That's it. They have not broken a tackle other than that all season. Last year, Omarion Hampton had 73 missed tackles forced through 12 games. Goss had 13. Criswell had 11. But they had 114 missed tackles forced through, 12 games, 13 games, through 13 games last year, which comes out to just under 10 per game, right? So it's about, 8.5 per game? I'm not doing the math,
No, I don't do math. Something like that.
But 114, so, 114 missed tackles forced in 13 games is 8.76. So 8.8 missed tackles forced per game. They've now played 2 games, and they're sitting at 6 total, and that's against one of those teams that you should have a lot of missed tackles forced against. So, it's just a big difference. Yards after contact per rush, Omarion Hampton averaged 4.35 yards after contact per rush last year. This year, they're averaging 2.71 yards per contact as a rushing unit. That's 2 yards per rush difference before and after contact. That hurts you.
That's a very big number. When you look at it, Preston from Greensboro, and Preston's always in the chat, says, "Can you coach that?" I think you can practice it. Can you coach it? I don't know that that's a
yes and no. I do think actually there are certain things you can coach. I think you can coach angles and, hitting the hole with the right amount of force and making sure that you understand that, like, for example, that you brought up the screen pass, one of the screen passes. I broke down 3 screen passes in a row on the one drive, and one of those went to Hall, and he just inexplicably, he catches the screen pass and just looks and then just runs directly at 2 defenders and goes down in a heap. It's like, what are you doing? Right? That's one where if he catches that and runs at an angle towards the sideline, he probably gets 3 or 4 yards minimum just by speed to the sideline. And the other thing is that you're changing the angle so that maybe you stick your foot in the ground and a guy sort of overruns you or something and you get a missed tackle forced. So there are some things you can coach, just in terms of okay, your track on this, the reason that you went down here with that tackle is because your track was here and it needed to be 1/4 yard over here, and stick your foot in the ground and hit that with force, and you're going to break that tackle. If you look at the tackle that June broke, it was because he got a head of steam, headed straight up field, and he was running downhill, and when the guy came up to hit him, he had all the momentum, he had all the force, and the guy, the arm tackle just kind of bounced off him. That's what you need. So to some degree, that's up to him. That's just him being an athlete. But some of it also is making sure that a guy's hitting the right seam in the right way with the right angles and all that. We talk about tackling angles, and I thought Schottmer had a great point earlier this week about the improvement that we saw defensively in terms of guys taking angles in tackling that led to better tackling as a unit. To where, look, even if the guy doesn't go down on your tackle, you've steered him towards all your help, and they're arriving roughly contemporary with you, and now you as a team can tackle better. Good defenses have great angles all the time because you're constantly forcing to your help, and that allows lots of hats to get to the football.
Yep.
And the same thing works in the reverse. Good running backs find ways to run away from help. Find ways to, go where they're not or go where the help is weakest, and then you're going to run through more tackles that way because you're getting one-on-ones. The part you can't coach, I don't think, to the same degree is if you get a one-on-one in space, like, I coached with Anthony Barber, who was a very good running back for NC State for a number of years.
In Garner High School.
Yeah, in Garner High. I mean, he was a dude now.
A billion yards for Garner High School.
He was a dude now, and he was a really good coach. And there were times where we're out there in the practice field or we're watching film or whatever, and it's like, man, can we get him to do that? And he'd just look at us and be like, "No, guys, like." He just ain't a dude. And then there are other times where like he'd coach our guys and he'd be like, that's a one-on-one. You just have to be a dude here, man. Like you that's on you. You have to be the guy. Like, and if you're not that guy, then we're going to have to find somebody who is. That's how we'd coach those guys at that level. And he understood that because there's a certain point of innateness. Like you can see that out on the flag football field. That 7-year-old, for whatever reason, understands how to stop, start, and go to where kids aren't getting his flag.
Yep.
And other kids go out there and they're just stiff and run straight into guys. Some of that's just, it's born. So there's some things you can coach, some things you can't.
One point you made there, and we're talking with Jason Staples here on the game plan. No Greg Barnes tonight, so we're having more of a question and answer session here. So if you're in the live chat, drop some questions in there. There's a couple on the board. Tar Pit premium message boards I'll get to as well. But one thing you mentioned about the struggles with the offense, and I think this is a key point, and this is one of those things where it's got to be frustrating, is it's not the same person messing up every time. You have one bust or two busts per play. If it's the same guy all the time, you just replace them. You find somebody else that can do it. And this staff is struggling with finding guys that can do their 111 every time as a unit. And Jason, that makes it tough to correct quickly, to your point as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, and one thing I wanted to bring into this at some point, one thing that, in my assessment of what we could expect last week, that I think I underplayed and underestimated the impact that it might have going into last week's game is the short week.
Yes. Belichick talked about that on whenever we got him on Tuesday, about how that cramped everything up to be able to do things that you would normally do going into the week. And that's your point here.
Yeah. Normally they say that the improvement made from week 1 to week 2 is the biggest you're going to see over the course of the season. I think for Carolina, that might be week 2 to week 3 because of that short week. Mm-hmm. So we've said all year we're not going to know who this team is until the Central Florida game. We might have a much better idea of how much improvement they can actually manage to pull off after this game. If they go in and they blow the doors off of Richmond, and it's not a good Richmond team. I mean, even for Richmond, but if they go in and they blow the doors off and they execute, and Belichick talked about this as well, that the execution is on you as a team. It doesn't matter who your opponent is. Execution's up to you. And that, if they go out and they execute at all the key spots against Richmond and they clean up some of those little things that were killing them in prior weeks, that's a really good sign moving forward. If they don't, I think Scott Dawson's right. 59 yards in the second half versus Charlotte is concerning. If you have anything like that against Richmond, then this is kind of a look out. There's some losses coming down the line because it's going to be very hard to correct things from here. Now, they do have some open dates as well to correct things, but at that point you start saying, okay, well, Drake May isn't walking through that door, and Josh Downs isn't walking through that door, and Omarion Hampton isn't walking through that door, and how can you figure out how to get some of these guys to make a difference?
Some interesting questions here in the chat. We're going to get to them. Go ahead and get to them now. We're going to talk Richmond game plan because evidently Ben Roethlisberger's quarterback for Richmond. It was funny listening to
he doesn't move
Belichick's
as well as Ben, but
I mean, Belichick's press conference. I got a feeling I was listening to, was it Lou Holtz, that every time his teams would play, they were playing the 85 Bears. But at any rate, I think this is an interesting question. And Preston, you're rocking it. Would bringing a veteran like Max Johnson in against Richmond even accomplish anything? Seems to me Gio needs more snaps in the system. This is all the backup quarterback needs reps thing. But I do agree this might be a good question. And it's a good question for you looking at a game like this. I mean, the score needs to be stretched out regardless of who plays. But to Preston's point, is this a game that you really need to work Gio Lopez as much as possible because he needs it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. I think you have to work Gio a bunch in this game. The thing with Max Johnson, I mean, there's some aspect of you don't know what he is exactly after the injury, but you have a very good sense of what he is as a college player. Like, what does he bring to the table? Well, you got 4 years of tape. You can turn a lot of that on and you see thousands of reps. So, I think as you're preparing for this season, you feel like Gio Lopez gives you a lot more. He gives you a lot higher ceiling for the season because of his running ability, because of some of the other things that he brings to the table. And what you're trying to do early on, you're probably not going to lose to Richmond. You were probably going to lose to TCU either way. You're probably going to beat Charlotte either way. You're probably going to beat Richmond either way. UCF, But what you're trying to do is get to where by the time you get to games that are a little bit more marginal, like UCF and basically the entire ACC schedule, you want to be as close to your ceiling as you can be. Now, here's the thing. I think your floor with Max Johnson is higher than your floor with Gio Lopez because of all the experience, because of some of the other things that he brings to the table. And I think we saw that against TCU. When things spiraled with Gio, it got worse. And then Max actually stabilized some things and kind of elevated the floor. And it wasn't just that TCU stopped playing. They were still playing hard. TCU came in very motivated to try to embarrass North Carolina. They wanted 60, right? They wanted to go out there and pour it on as much as they could because they felt, they played the disrespect card and justifiably so. Fine. But he came in and helped raise the floor. At this point in the season, you want to try to get to your ceiling. And the thing is, if let's say you get to halftime of the UCF game and Gio is just completely ineffective, but there's still a chance to win that game. Maybe you make a switch there. Maybe you get past the second bye, and if things start to really go sour at some point, then you start going, okay, well, we got it. The floor has to be raised. Then you make the switch. But it doesn't do you any good to make a switch now or to give Max a bunch of reps now because I don't think you discover anything. I don't think you find anything. I think the room for ceiling there is less. So I think what you do is, I think even if you're winning pretty big against Richmond, you probably try to give Gio Lopez at least 2.5 quarters in this game. And if you're not plastering him by the end of the third quarter, he's still in there.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, he needs work, and the only way you get it is you get it. And I love the point about Max Johnson, the floor point, and also that you know what you're getting for the most part. So that answers that question, Preston. I hope that you got what you want here. Here you go. WH1315. How do y'all think? How deep do you think the coaches will go in the running back room? McGill get reps versus Richmond, or the 5 guys who have played the 5 they're rolling with? This is another one of those questions where I think you've got to get guys reps. I think you get June reps. But to your point earlier, Jason, these guys have got to play and show that they can do it. And then you start whittling it down to a hot hand situation or whatever. What do you think in the running back room?
Yeah, I think the 5 that they've played are the 5 that they've kind of settled on as the guys for this year. If they get to McGill, it'll be because they're up big. I mean, big. And we're talking about garbage time stuff at the end of the game. That's my guess. I mean, again, I don't know what's in their head, but the way I'm thinking about it is, if I'm them, I'm not in coaches' meetings right now likely to be bringing up, you know what we should try our number 6 running back. He might be the answer. He might be what we're asking for. The odds of that's not something you hear in coaches' meetings all that often. You might hear, look, I know he came into the season number 4, but he's been our best guy so far. Maybe we give him some first quarter reps and see what happens. Let's find out if he's the hot hand. But you're not normally going to be like, well, let's try number 6 yet. I don't think any of the backs, and this is something that Belichick also said in one of his press conferences, was, he needs to get a chance to see those backs actually get going and get started a little bit. And none of the backs has had a chance really to work up a lather yet.
I was about to say the same thing. You're right. None of them have carried it enough to get really into a ball game.
Yeah, so you want to, I think my guess is that there will be probably 3 backs in this game that get the bulk of the carries. And that, maybe a 4th guy plays a decent amount, but ends up blocking more or whatever, having a different role. But I do think that they're going to try to figure out to feed guys, 4 or 5 carries or opportunities at a time to see, okay, are you going to start to get the feel, or are you just a stiff? Because what they would, I can tell you right now, what they want more than anything else is if they could find a guy that they can give the ball 15, 18 times a game to, that they know that by the time you give him the ball the 5th or 6th time, it might be a home run. They want that, especially if that guy's not going to go for a bunch of losses. So they want to find that guy that's going to be able to give them some consistency at the position. But none of the guys that they've given carries so far have given any indication of doing that just yet. And some will say, Demon June has done this yet. He is not, because there are a couple busts that were him in that Charlotte game, where it's like, I can tell you right now what's being said in that film room. Son, if you can't do this correctly, if you can't actually go the right direction for the handoff here, if I can't trust you to do your job and actually know your assignment, then I can't put you out there even if you are going for 7 yards a carry when you do have the ball in your hands. You have to be able to get this right, or I can't play you. Because he had 2 just utter busts. One where he went the wrong way, and one where he was the target on a what would have been a wide receiver screen, even though he's a running back lined up out there, but it was to the number 1 guy lined up in a trips once you motion the once you motion the H back that direction, and he didn't run the route. And you look at it, and Lopez is looking out there, and all of a sudden Lopez is like, shoot, and he just takes off running, because and you wonder what's going on there, and then you watch it and you go, oh well, that was a screen. It was called right there, and it actually would had a chance to hit, but the freshman didn't know. Freshman's up the field running some other route. He just didn't know what he was supposed to do. So even there, even the guy that on the few carries that he had did the most with them, he had the most busts of those guys. So they're going to have to figure out what they can get out of that room. And that, I think, has to be a big part of what they're trying to figure out this week against Richmond. They've got to figure out which, I mean, by the time you're in conference play, you have to have it down to two backs that are getting most of your carries. Three at the most. You can't go out there and have five backs because nobody gets in rhythm. So by that point, this is the chance to audition for that.
And they're not running a lot of plays. It's not like they're running 80 plays a game where there's a lot of snaps to be had. They're running, 55 to 60, maybe?
Yeah. I think it was 58 last.
Shout out to Jim Woodall, who's watching us from Tanzania. Jim, you are living the life, my man. Retired, traveling the world. He's either on a boat in some Caribbean island or now he's out on a safari in Tanzania. Wow. Had to mention that. Shout out to that. One more question before we flip it over to Richmond specific. I'm going to give he's got a second one. WH1315 another. Is there any room for hope for the tight ends, or is that room just cheeks? Assume we're talking butt cheeks.
Yeah.
I feel like they've got more talent than it's shown so far, but you may have a different opinion. But how are we to know from what we've seen? You break down the film. What do you see?
What I see is a group that I'm not sure is really going to be as physical as they need to be on the blocking side of things at any point this year. I do think, 80 has been the guy that they've expected to block more, and we talked about that on the day after, that when he's in there, they're running. Right? That's Jordan Owens. And the problem is that when your blocking tight end doesn't block very well, that limits you. But the thing is, some of the mistakes that he's making as a blocker right now are of the largely correctable variety. I mean, it's just a matter of getting angles just slightly cleaned up and all that. So I do think there's some chances for them to clean up some execution just by guys, your step should be a little tighter here. You got to make sure that, you're hitting your angle on this part of the body when you make initial contact as a blocker rather than this part of the body. It's that stuff. But I don't think we're going to see him become, I'm dating myself here, Eric Green as a blocker anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to become, there's no Gronkowski in this room. But I do think you're right that there's more from this group that they should be able to cobble together than what we've seen so far. I mean, I think Connor Cox has some physical tools that he can be better than what we've seen so far. And he's been, serviceable as a blocker. He's been, in the average range. Jake Johnson has actually showed effort as a blocker when on the, two opportunities that he's had to block, which, is a nice advancement from what we saw last year there. So, I mean, there's chances, but I do think that this room is, at this point, maybe a little, like their ceiling is a little bit capped, but they can be better than they've been.
Talking with Jason Staples on the game plan. Carolina-Richmond on Saturday at 3:30 in Kenan Stadium. Let's flip over to a couple of interesting points that we made. If you joined us late, and shout out to the 150 plus that are in here. You need to go back and listen to why you played Gio Lopez a lot in this game. This is not a game that you use to get Max Johnson reps. I think that is a key point from this show. And also the running backs here sort of narrowing that room down. But, Jason, let's talk about Richmond specifically. Let's talk about Carolina's offensive game plan against Richmond specifically. Questions in the chat. Does Lopez see the field? Brian Evans asked, where do they find more speed on offense this season? I don't know if you can just find it. There is no free agent pool sitting out there.
They do have more speed than they've shown, though. I mean, Culliver has it. We've already seen that.
Yeah, but to your point, he got banged pretty good. But to your point also that we've discussed a lot is guys that are struggling with knowing what to do often appear much slower than they are.
Right.
Just sort of speak to that aspect and sort of meld it into what they need to show against Richmond, because I think this is the last real opportunity to show it with a little bit of impunity, because I don't know if Richmond can punish you for screwing it up. I think from here on there are teams that can, but talk to me about that aspect of playing free. We talked about that a lot in the offseason. They just want them to play free. Well, you play free, you play fast. And
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what Carolina needs to show.
I think one of the indicators of that is Isaiah Johnson. You know how many drops he had in his whole career coming into Carolina?
Like what, 1 or 2 or none?
0.
He's already
And
topped that.
he gets an opportunity out there against Charlotte and promptly puts it on the ground. And that looked, take it from somebody who's dropped some balls exactly like that. That looked exactly like that. That looked like that was a very familiar and somewhat PTSD inducing drop that I saw from him, because I've seen myself have that exact drop before, or something very much like it. And that is an uncertainty drop. So you have concentration drops, you have physical drops where, a guy has stone hands, he just, for whatever reason, he just can't catch it with his fingers or whatever. You have other types of things. I had a separated shoulder one year, and I had a couple that you could perhaps qualify as a drop, where the ball's in my hands and it got broken up by a DB just because I couldn't grip it well enough with my right hand anymore. Like, I had a weak right hand the rest of that time because of that. That's something, by the way, it worries me a little bit with Culliver's injury, that may impact him in that same way. But what I saw from Isaiah Johnson was, it looked to me like he was like, I hope I'm right here. And okay, ball's coming to me, and he had, like, to bring golf into it, it's like trying to swing when you have like 36 different swing thoughts in your head. The one thing when you do that is it's going in the trees somewhere, or into the water, or whatever else. The good swingers are people with who score well on the golf course. These are people who they settle it down to one or two thoughts, and it's one at a time. Okay, alignment, set up this way. They have their routine. All right, face at get the club face there. All right, control my backswing here. All right, we're good. Pull the trigger, be smooth. And that's it. You're not overthinking it. But if you're sitting there like, okay, got to make sure I keep my left arm slightly above my right here, make sure that I'm okay, keep my hips square. All right, sit back, and if you're doing all that, you're just not going to be a good swinger at the golf club. The same thing is true for wide receivers. Guys catch the football when they have one thing on their mind, and that's catching the dang ball. It's really, really hard to do when you've got other things, like you have to count your steps. If you're in a new offense, a lot of times you have to, you've got a guy that's there that's very invested in you being separated from the football. You've got all sorts of things that are obstacles that can be on your head. The guys that just keep catching the football are guys that are able to block all that out. And the one thing that they're doing is they're able to focus entirely on that football, catch the football, then be an athlete. And he looked like he was doing anything but. So that's a good example of exactly your point. And I've seen that from several players so far, where they look like they're just slow motion because they're not sure what they're supposed to be doing. But there's speed on this roster. Nathan Leacock, he ran what, 10.8?
They've got guys that can go.
He was 10.9 at worst. I mean, that's flying at his size. Now, I think he's pretty stiff as an athlete, but speed's not a problem. Isaiah Johnson, I think, is a guy that's probably sub 4.5. Nobody's questioning Chris Culliver's speed at this point. I think Dayton Sneed is actually reasonably fast. I think Jason Robinson is very quick. Javarius Green is, he's 4.5 probably, mid 4.5. Alex Taylor, also a fast guy. I mean, they've got speed, but you can't look fast if you're not getting the football with green grass, with, where it's out in front of you and a chance to run. You can't demonstrate speed if the ball's not getting to you to begin with, and it's hard to do it if you're uncertain of how you're setting things up. So it's just going to take a little time. But I don't think they're short on actual, track speed on this team. They've got some guys that can go, but they're going to have to figure out how to make it happen. And a lot of that is just gelling. And some of it's just getting the ball to those guys.
So in Richmond, what's Carolina do offensively against Richmond? There's a whole lot to work on. But as we talked about before, unless something significantly changes in game 3, they're going to have probably 55 to 60 plays, 65 tops, to accomplish all the stuff we've talked about on the offensive side. So what do you want to see? What do you expect to see Saturday on that side of the ball?
Well, first of all, I mean, you turn on the tape with Richmond, and they don't have even the athletes, I think, up front that Charlotte had. So, you look at that. That's first and foremost. You want to again, if your identity as a football team is what it's supposed to be, they've said all year, what is their identity going to be?
Carolina's physical run football.
So what's your primary game plan against a team that should be outmanned up front? That's run the dang ball. Now, does that mean you run the football on first down all the time? No. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to take advantage of them trying to stop what your identity is. Right? So if your identity is run the dang ball, a lot of times that means you're going to play action or RPO on first down. You're trying to get them to put those guys in the box to stop it. So your first goal is to try to make them bring numbers in to stop your run, and then take some advantage of that on the edges with some RPOs and some early downfield vertical type stuff on some play action to try to take advantage of their efforts to stop it. But what that means, though, is if they give you a favorable box on that first drive, you run it until they're no longer in a favorable box, and you try to find all game. The goal is to try to find the running back or couple running backs that are going to be able to do what you need them to do on that. That's what you're doing. The secondary goal is getting Lopez that much more comfortable in what you're asking him to do all season. And so you're going to have to give him a few more deep shots. They took 3 or 4 of them against Charlotte. I'd expect, somewhere around 4 deep shots in this game where you're trying to give him some opportunities to feel the ball come off his hand on some deep shots where this is a money ball shot, right? Give him some opportunities for success on that. And then beyond that, just work your base stuff. That's the goal. If you're having to get past your base stuff in this game, it's a fail. To me, that's what you're dealing with this team. This is Richmond, I don't think is as good a team in terms of personnel as what you just played.
That's interesting. I don't disagree. And I love your point about don't get past your base stuff. Let's talk about Lopez just briefly here, though. Somebody in the chat says, is the play calling hamstringing Lopez to what he can do? I don't believe that to be the case going back and reviewing it. When I watch it live, it feels like it, especially felt like it against TCU, but I think TCU is a really good football team. Going to make a lot of players look not very good.
Well, they got about 8 guys that'll play in the NFL within 2 years.
And so I don't know if we can really judge that game plan against them. But I think this will be a game that we can see what he can do because they need to put him in position to do, Jason, to your point, to find out what he can do, but also let him do what he does. And that's what I want to see offensively. So my question is, does it happen, or do they keep it vanilla and we wait and see, does it happen against UCF or against Clemson? Richmond's not the breakout the game, to your point.
Yeah,
break out the bank, to your point.
So I don't think you're doing that. It's not that. I think what you are trying to do though is find his comfort zone. And the reason that it feels like the play calling hasn't really helped him is we really have not seen him at any point this season get into a rhythm. That's really when people are when people are asking this question, when you're talking about like it just doesn't feel like they're really helping him out, it's that. Because when you look at the tape, you go, well, there was a play there to be had, but they just didn't make it for whatever reason. What I don't think they've done well this year, as far as Lopez is concerned, is the helping your quarterback get comfortable by finding the few things that he can do with your personnel against their personnel that gets him comfortable and gets him into a rhythm. It's sort of like in basketball, if a guy's not quite like if a guy's a really good shooter and he's not making shots, what's the best thing that can happen for him in the course of a game?
For me, it was give me a layup. Let me see the ball go through the basket.
For me, it was go to the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to the free throw line because I'm going to make the like that's automatic, right? I know what that feels like. Like that, now I'm in complete muscle memory and I see the ball go through the basket. Okay, recalibrated, right? You get to the foul line a couple times. You take the ball to the basket. Maybe you see it go through the basket with the layup or whatever. But the bottom line is you're not hitting those outside shots. You get to the foul line. You get that muscle memory a couple times, and all of a sudden you're good to go, right? You're recalibrated. To me, they've got to figure out, and this is one of the things that as an offensive coordinator and as a quarterback coach, you do with your quarterbacks. One of the things that I would do as a quarterback coach is I would ask my quarterback early in the week, what do you like? What do you like this week? We've gone through some of the tape. Here's what we got. What is it that you feel most comfortable with right now? Because we're gonna try to start with some of that stuff. Like, you like that look? Okay, so if we formation to that and you get that throw, you feel like you're going to be able to put that in there every time? All right. It's good to know. What's the next thing? So, and then day before game, or the night before game, 2 nights before game, depending on how your meetings go, you're asking your quarterback in that final game plan meeting, you're going, okay, as we set our script, what is it that you like? What is it that you like the most? And that's the thing that I'm sure they've done that. And I think part of that is what we've seen on the scripts. Opening scripts have been really good. And that's been the closest we've seen to Lopez being in rhythm. He's done it. But they've found no way to get him past the couple initial concepts on those opening scripts. And to me, what you're looking for this game for him, and what you're trying to do to help him in terms of your game plan, is can we get to the second and third drive to where we can carry forward the rhythm of the first drive? Now, last week, first drive was just, he hit a go ball. First week, he hit the glance route. Thing is, when you look at the tape, those are the 2 things that he did the best at South Alabama. Throw the deep ball, throw the go ball, and hit that kind of glance route type thing off of an RPO action. The question is there anything else that you can do to get him really in rhythm, to sustain that rhythm past that first drive? And I don't think they've found that yet. That's what they're going to have to search for. Ideally, you try to find that this week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the question is, if it looks so good there, why is it so difficult to continue it? To your point, that's what we'll look for. Talking with Jason Staples here on the game plan. We're 48 minutes in. It feels like we just started. I'm going to ask one more question from the message board, because I did ask people to ask questions in the message board, and I want to talk about Carolina defense briefly. It says, this is Hill City on the message board, assuming we are without, that's obviously North Carolina without Yates for an extended period of time, what do you do about a lack of pass rush? Do you blitz more and risk not getting there? Or do you drop 7 and 8 consistently and try to keep the other team from hitting explosives? As we turn to the defense, I'm not sure I have any complaints about watching Carolina's defense this year, even against TCU. Obviously, there's some deficiencies there, but Jason, to Hill City's point, how do you approach pressure on the quarterback? Because you blitz and don't get there, and you've got a decent quarterback, and you're going to get cooked pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is something where I guarantee you, and actually this would be a great question to ask him in a press conference. But if you ask Bill Belichick this question, you're going to get an answer that's going to be something like, well, it really depends on the team you're playing and the quarterback, especially that you're playing. Right? Get into my Belichick impression here. Well, when you're playing against a Peyton Manning or somebody like that, if you come after him and you don't get there, then he's gonna make you pay for it. You're dead. So you have to understand what a guy's best at, where the pressure would need to come from if you're gonna blitz it, and then some guys they have trouble diagnosing different coverages more, and so you're trying to find that edge depending on what the guy can do. Moving back into me, what you're looking at on tape, one of the things you want to see is how does this quarterback respond to coverage changes? Right? What happens do we have any tape where a team changes coverage look on the snap? Does the quarterback diagnose that really quickly, or does he have trouble coming off of pre-snap? That's really what I'm looking at. Like, that's the first thing I want to assess with a lot of these quarterbacks in college. If I'm running a defense like Belichick, that's what I want to know. Because if it's a quarterback who, if I change my look, if I show quarters at the snap and then rotate to middle of the field closed with a let's say a fire zone or something, 5-man rush, does he have trouble understanding or recognizing in the moment where he needs to go now that the coverage is different from the look that I presented at the snap? If so, that's all I'm doing as much as I can all game. I'm going to give him one look and I'm going to change it to something else. I'm going to give him another look and oops, I kept it that time. And then I'm going to give him another look and then I'm going to change it. I want to do a lot of that to test, especially college quarterbacks have a really hard time with that. Right? That's the thing. I mean, and that's where, I got a question from one of my Florida State followers this week asking, whether Tony White for Florida State, whether he's going to end up going to the NFL to coordinate defense. It's like, his defense is college defense. It is. The main reason for that is the whole thing. I mean, they're spot dropping a lot in zones. You can't spot drop in the NFL. Not much. I mean, they did a little bit they did a decent amount of that with the Legion of Boom up in
Seattle,
Washington, up in Seattle for a good while. But that's because if you look at their DBs,
they're all studs.
Yeah, you could do that with those guys. But what they're predicating on down there and what he's doing is he's changing the looks on quarterbacks basically almost every play, and it makes it really hard to for a guy who's not as who hasn't played this game for 10 years as a professional to process quickly. So to me, that's the first thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to play games with what the quarterback's seeing. And then the second thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that I'm putting myself in the best run defense situations possible on first and second down so that I'm getting long yardage situations. And then if I'm in long yardage situations, now the whole playbook's open. But it's really about stopping the run on first down and presenting different coverage looks, much more than it is about how much you blitz and all those things. That's the thing that to me is what you're focusing on here. And this quarterback's pretty dangerous, actually.
Yeah, it's a big boy. He is very large. I made the Roethlisberger reference early, but he's that size. But he's also a threat to run the ball. And traditionally, running quarterbacks affect you badly if you're a North Carolina defense. That's what I'm interested to see.
Every defense.
Yeah, every defense. But it's it seems like we were talking about Lamar Jackson the other day, me and my boys, and Lamar Jackson probably won the Heisman in Kenan Stadium that year. That and the hurdle against Syracuse. But at any rate, let's talk about how
the
Carolina
60-some points against Florida State at home.
Yeah, when they cooked him.
He won the Heisman like 4 times, and what he did against Clemson on Clemson's home field. That guy won the Heisman like 6 times that year.
Exactly. The Richmond quarterback Wickersham is not Lamar Jackson, but he is an effective runner. He's an effective thrower. They've got one other running back, Foster Powell, that does damage. But Jason, what do you want to see from the defensive line? I asked. This is, I asked Belichick about this. How do you factor in level of competition to how well your guys are playing, to who deserves to play more? And he said, basically, we want to see what their fundamentals are. Because if you do the fundamentals against everybody, you've got a pretty good chance of being successful. So more of that against Richmond, obviously. But your thoughts across the defense? I think Carolina still needs to step forward on the defensive line and at some of the spots in the secondary, even against a Richmond team that's probably just as comfortable with the quarterback running as they are with him throwing it. Carolina's plan on defense.
So again, for me, this is very much about finding ways to make it so that Richmond can't throw it when they want to throw it, that they're throwing it when you're making them throw it. And that comes down to finding ways of winning the game inside out with your defensive line, defensive tackles. And that was, the first video session that I did this week was on how encouraging the interior defensive line play was against Charlotte. And I said on that video, like, yes, it's against Charlotte, but fundamentals travel, right? If you do it right against Charlotte, then, maybe you'll do it right against somebody else. And yeah, maybe they'll still kick your tail every so often, but you're not going to be on skates the way that you were when you were doing it wrong. And, I don't think Richmond's offensive line is really any better than what you saw from Charlotte. The difference is I do think that their quarterback is a whole lot more dangerous than what you saw from Charlotte. Because of his ability as a thrower. I'm actually not as concerned about him as a runner. Because, he's not, Lamar Jackson terrifies you as a runner because he's so dang fast. This guy is he's a mobile guy. He makes plays on the run, but, I don't think he's as fast as Lopez. So, he's a guy you have to actually, he's hard to get down in the pocket. He's hard to corral. He's gonna frustrate you in some of those ways. And he does throw the football downfield pretty well. And I expect to see them get some downfield opportunities where they're probably going to take advantage of Carolina some. I think they're going to find some space. And I don't think that, I think it would be a very good sign if Carolina keeps them to 3 points. I don't think that they'll do that this week like they did against Charlotte. I think that would be a very good sign. But I do think this is a week where you might be able to get a pick or two. Because he's going to challenge you downfield much more on some things, and if you change the looks, he'll throw it to some underneath guys. Because he'll try to fit one in there, and this would be the week to have a guy like Kamori House, for example, just step up underneath a ball, and take it for a pick six. Like this is the kind of week where that could happen. But to me, this game defensively is all about DeAndre Robinson, Leroy Jackson, Isaiah Johnson, CJ Mims, to a lesser extent, Smith Vilbert, Melkart Abujade. Those guys taking care of business up front, especially on first down, as they essentially make this team one-dimensional and force a good quarterback to be great. That's when you can really limit them. And I think that's what they're going to be able to do. I for the first time in a long time, I'm coming into a game thinking Carolina should dominate on the defensive interior, and that's what's going to pay the dividends down the line for your defense. And that allows you to change your coverages and do some of those things to create a turnover or two.
To Gilbert's chat, I can't believe it. Lamar Jackson won the Heisman in 16. That Carolina game was in 17. So it was, yeah. To your point, Jason, he won it against Florida State and Clemson in 16 and then came into Kenan Stadium and put up 5-something as the reigning Heisman winner. All right, predictions. Carolina and Richmond. You got no Greg Barnes to lean on here. The question in the chat is, does Carolina reach 30 points?
Yes.
Who you got?
Yeah. So this is one where I think offensively you're playing a team that on the whole is better than what you faced last week. So you're probably going to give up some more points than what you did last week. It'll be a very good sign if you give up 3 or fewer like you did last week. I think they're going to score. They're going to score a touchdown or so, maybe 2 touchdowns against you. But I think offensively, you're in a place where I think you're better than what I think their defense is not quite as good as what you played last week, and I think you've had an opportunity to clean some stuff up that you put on tape, and you haven't had a chance to clean up just yet. So, I think somewhere in the high 30s is probably about right for Carolina. I'll go say Carolina wins this game 38-13. I think that's the range that this game probably should be. I think if Carolina scores under 30 in this game, that's an emergency sign. Right? That's oh boy, this could be a longer season than anticipated. With a defensive touchdown, that could change things as well. But I think somewhere around 38-13 seems pretty reasonable. I think some of those points offensively probably come on a short field or maybe even a return for a touchdown because they get aggressive and they will throw into coverage periodically. And I think you're going to have some opportunities there. This is a take care of business week. This is a find out who your guys are for the rest of the season week. I think they'll get a few things cleaned up offensively. And I think this is the last week where you're just flat out superior physically compared to the team that you're playing. The rest of the year, it's much harder. So you better get it cleaned up this week.
Agree with everything there. I had it 44-10 before you announced yours. So, but I think that comes with a defensive touchdown. And I think to your point, it could be House, it could be Simpson, it could be one of the DL guys getting a scoop and score. Like State had a big man touchdown earlier against Wake Forest. You love to see those. 44-10 for me with the defensive touchdown. So that's 37 offensive points. I think they got to get there because we talk a lot about dots and lines and trends, and three would be a trend if the offense was not good against Richmond. We're going to get out of here. Shout out to everybody that's been in the chat. Melinda, I'd love to do another women's soccer show. We'll see if we can get it done. A lot of content on Inside Carolina. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina Live from the Bowls Lot. Jason will be in the Bowls Lot. This is your chance to meet Jason Staples in person. If you're watching this show,
nobody's going to show up, Tommy.
I know. Nobody's going to be there. It's 12:30 to 2:30 from the Bowls Lot. We'll have Staples. We'll have another former player. We'll have the interns. We'll have a big party in the Bowls Lot. So come see us 12:30 to 2:30 on Saturday ahead of Carolina and Richmond. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, and everybody in the Inside Carolina fandom. Join up at InsideCarolina.com. If you're not already a premium subscriber, get in the game. We'll see you Saturday.